Hi, everybody. Today we're going to be speaking with Bjartmar from Studin. That's an Icelandic outlet. They recently broke some huge news regarding the Julian Assange case, specifically that one of the key witnesses in the case has recently recanted his evidence against Assange. So definitely listen in. This is a big deal, and I hope you enjoy. Thanks so much. Bjartmar, have you really received any inquiries from Western media or English-speaking media about this groundbreaking article?
Not so much. Have been some inquiries about it, but I can imagine that the reason why is maybe because this is a huge case, and it's a difficult one, and it has a long story. I mean, we're talking about something that began in 2010. So for people, especially investigative journalists like myself, to get into these cases like these, it's a little bit difficult. So I can fully understand that if people want to be reasonable about this case and want to report accurately about it, then I can a little bit understand that they are, I would not use the word hesitant, but I would use caution.
And
I can fully understand it.
And I read the article a few times, and it is a complex case. And can you try to summarize as best as you can what Siggy the hacker admitted to and some of the implications it may have on the U.S. government case against Assange?
Wow, yeah. Well, to begin with, Siggy the hacker is not a correct name. He is a non-hacker. He has no hacking skills whatsoever. That's all a lie. And even he admits that he doesn't know even where this name comes from. So he's not an Icelandic hacker. He's basically an Icelandic criminal. That's what he's mostly famous for here in Iceland, at least. And now possibly worldwide regarding because of his story, and we pointed out his former convictions. This is a basic case, so we can maybe then go further in each every detail of this. But the basic is that the Americans made a first indictment of Julian Assange based on the Espionage Act of the United States of 1917. They then figured out that they would have the so-called New York Times problem, that if they would go through the case with the first indictment. And so they had to add something to this. So they made a second indictment, or a superseding indictment, that basically made Julian Assange a hacker, not a journalist, but a hacker. So they added all these things that he was supposed to have committed crimes here in Iceland. For example, he and according to the indictment, Siggy and him were supposed to hack the Icelandic parliament to get some phone records. He was supposed to have gotten access to the budgeting system here, so he could trace normal blue police cars, and also he was supposed to have hacked something to get banking details, banking documents, and this you can see in the indictment. So my investigation actually just started with Siggy the hacker, where he was actually today, and I found out in my investigation that he was still committing financial fraud, like he was sentenced in 2013 and 14 for. And after that, he told me everything, because I basically had all the evidence on him that he was committing fraud, and he agreed to it and basically confessed. So since I had him, all the content information, I was speaking to him, I started asking him about the FBI case, which happened back in the beginning of in August 2011, and then was woken up again in 2019. Basically, what he told me does not connect with the indictment. So there's two stories here. One thing was said in the indictment, the other thing was Siggy tells me. And the biggest revelation, I would say, would be about the phone conversation of the Icelandic members of the Icelandic parliament, which supposedly they together, according to the indictment, hacked. According to Siggy, an individual, a third party, gave him records or files on a USB key, and I pressed him on this, and I asked, So, okay, what did you do with the USB key? And he told me that he put it in his computer, and I asked, did you check the files? And he said no. So I said, so you have no idea if these are audio files, or you have actually no idea what this is? And he said, no, I just then took it from the computer, put it on another USB stick, and gave it to Julian Assange. So this is no correlation with the indictment. The second thing is also that regarding the banking documents, that they were supposedly have hacked to get these banking documents. This is complete bullshit because most of the journalists here in Iceland actually had this file before even Siggi the hacker got it. So there was no hacking involved. They just got a file from a third party. The third thing is also that he was supposed to have used an unauthorized access to gain access to a computer system so he could track police vehicles. Well, the access actually came from Siggi the hacker. He actually was in the search and rescue of Iceland, and he told me that he gave the account to Julian. And I asked him, is there any evidence that he was using it? And Siggi said, I just gave it to him. I don't know if he used it. And then I pressed him. He said, firstly, he said that yes, he used it. And I pressed him, did you watch him use it? Did you see it? And he said, no, of course he just used it. He was paranoid. So basically the indictment and Siggi stories just got too many holes in.
Yes, absolutely. And reading the article, you really do get an impression of that. Speaking of Siggi's background a little bit, it's been long known that he's been, and you reveal this in the article, basically working for the FBI as an informant. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, he talks actually a lot about it. So basically the Icelandic article is a little bit longer than the English one. We're talking about almost 13,000 words in the Icelandic one. It goes much deeper in details. It shows also chat logs. We have actually, I had 12,000 documents we went over regarding this investigation. But yes, regarding how he became an FBI informant. Basically, in the beginning, when I was talking to him, he stick to a story that he didn't like what Lulsek, the hacker group with Sapo and Kyla were doing. He didn't, even though he asked them to do it. He didn't like what WikiLeaks were doing, and he didn't like this and he got scared after the Syrian files, which were basically that some group of hackers got some files from the Syrian dictator. When I pressed him on this story actually changed. So it changed over, the hours we spoke. This is actually based on 4 interviews for 9 hours. So it's a lot of time I spent speaking to him. But in the end, the story is basically this, that he got scared because the doors were closing on him. He knew he broke the law when he asked these hackers to attack Icelandic institutions, do cyber attacks on them, try to get some files from the city of Reykjavik, which is the capital here. And also he tried to, he made several DDoS attacks on Icelandic government institutions. So also he stole $60,000 United States dollars from WikiLeaks. So which he was actually indicted and charged and sentenced for. So that's no, it's not like he didn't do it. He actually did that. So, and he confessed to it, basically. So the doors were closing in on him, and he thought that he could run to the FBI and get a full immunity of everything. But the only immunity he could get were the cyber crimes, because the Icelandic police didn't know about it, but the FBI knew about it. So, and there's also a funny moment regarding when Siggi is an FBI informant, because actually on the 6th of June, Sapo was arrested by the FBI and became an FBI informant at that time. And when they were creating these cyber attacks on the Icelandic institutions, Sapo was working for the FBI. So FBI knew about these cyber attacks that Siggi was asking them to do. On the 23rd of August, Siggi becomes an FBI informant. but there's a chat log between Sapo and Sikki where they're actually trying to catch one another, both as FBI informants. So Sikki is trying to catch Sapo, and Sapo is trying to catch Sikki.
Sure.
They don't know that they're both FBI informants. And it's really funny to read these chat logs, how they're trying to entrap one another. It's a different story, basically. But it's one of these how you can see how these basically are not really the best police officers you can find.
Bjartmar, would you just tell our audience listening who Sabu is, and also the date when this was all happening, just for some context?
Yeah. So basically, Sabu became an FBI informant on 6th of June. He was arrested on the 6th of June of 2011. Sabu was a famous hacker of the Lulzak group, which also another member, which is called Kyla. She was supposed to be a 14-year-old girl, but actually was a 28-year-old British man. They were part of this Lulzak group, of course, with other hackers. And Sabu was a New York-based hacker, and there was a little bit tough family situation. He was raising up two of his nieces because the mother was in prison. And he just had to take this FBI deal because, otherwise they would have been taken into foster care. So I can fully understand that he would just go and make this deal with the FBI regarding the kids. He was actually sentenced, but according to the court documents here, the information that Sapo gave to the FBI stopped around 300 cyber attacks. But according to our sources, about half of these cyber attacks he stopped was actually his own. So, but he actually informed the FBI about other attacks. But he was basically a really famous hacker.
Sure. And again, for a little bit more context, Julian Assange was in Iceland at the time, right? When this was going on?
Yes, he was actually here in Iceland, and at this time, you have the atmosphere in Iceland was. We just came up from the financial collapse in October of 2008. Basically, all financial institutions in Iceland failed. We're talking about each and every single one. And this just made people really mad. We had the biggest protest in the history of the country at the time. People went to the streets. They were beating pots and pans together in front of the parliament. And the government collapsed because of this financial collapse. In 2011, WikiLeaks were, and 2010 and 2011, WikiLeaks were giving information to, the media about, leaks, of course. And the Icelanders actually just really loved that because we were getting leaks out of the financial system from the banks, collapsed banks that is, which showed how many criminals were actually working in the bank and how they were just criminals who were over the bank and spending the money and fabricating things and just, bad business. So the atmosphere in Iceland was that, we want an institution like WikiLeaks. We love this. We love the freedom of information. And so we actually got some support from the Icelandic parliament at the time to try to create some kind of a whistleblower heaven in Iceland at the time. So Julian Assange came into Iceland and actually was talking to the members of parliament here. We had a member of parliament who was actually part of WikiLeaks at the time for the Pirate Party. And there was just this huge information atmosphere at the time when Julian came here.
And again, to reiterate, part of Siggy's initial claim before he recently had made this admission to you that it was all a lie was that Julian Assange was attempting to hack government agencies at the same time while working for them, correct?
Working with them, working with the basically Icelandic government. And that's why also this doesn't make sense. There's nothing for WikiLeaks inside the phone calls from the Icelandic members of parliament. It's even not stored on any internal servers or anything like that. It's just fabrication. It's also that he will be making DDoS attacks on Icelandic government websites that would take them down maybe for 30, 40 minutes. this is just a child's game.
Mm-hmm.
This has no basics. It has no reason for this. So this basically doesn't make sense why this would be happening. And all of our internal investigation of this and all the files that we have, no evidence has shown us that any other member of WikiLeaks, member of staff or a volunteer or Julian Assange were taking part in this. And when I pressed Siggy, when he said, for example, that Julian Assange asked him to steal documents from members of members of and staff of WikiLeaks, I told him, did you have an internet chat of this? Do you have any chat logs? And he said, no. It was just a conversation between me and him. And when I asked him, did Julian Assange, for example, ask you to do these DDoS attacks? He said no, but he knew about them. So it's just nothing adds up here. And with the past and the present of how Siggy's mind works, it's just he's one of the best bullshit artists of this country, in the history even of this country. And trust me, we had several.
So he, as you mentioned earlier, he embezzles money from WikiLeaks, and I think in the article you phrased it really well. He inflates his presence within the organization, which he later recanted to you and saying this was all a lie. So it's 2013, 2014. These charges are being he's convicted, I believe. Does he actually serve jail time, or does the FBI immunity? Yeah. Oh, he does. Okay.
No, he did the jail time for the crimes he did in Iceland, because he had 14 victims of sexual abuse here in Iceland. Mm-hmm. 9 of these victims got their case heard in court. 5 of them didn't. Mm-hmm. One of these 5 committed suicide after that. So this FBI could not have taken this down.
Okay. Also,
he stole a ton of money from Icelandic companies, and they wanted their money back. So, but they never got their money back. But they wanted some justice, so they pressed charges. So these charges the FBI could not save him from. But all these cyber attacks, which the FBI knew because Sapo was an FBI informant, they hid from the Icelandic authorities. Mm-hmm. They never gave the Icelandic police any documentations of his cyber crimes. So that's how then he didn't get sentenced for those crimes.
Mm-hmm. In the article, there's a great section about this. I'm just trying to figure out the best way to phrase it. There is a bit of I don't want to say a double cross, but kind of some deception played by the FBI with the Icelandic authorities. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, basically, the FBI knew about the cyber attacks that we said that Sapo made for Siggy, because of course he was an FBI informant. They heard, because on 23rd of August of 2011, Siggy contacted the Icelandic embassy, and he said he had some information about WikiLeaks. And at this time, all the doors were closing around him. He had burned every bridge also behind him. And it's then the FBI, 48 hours later, after he contacts the embassy, we have 8 FBI agents and agents from the DOJ and the New York prosecutor's office that came here to Iceland. Mm-hmm. But the legal thing they need to do is that they have to have a reason to come into this country to operate as police officers. Mm-hmm. And because, of course, we're an independent state, and we take this quite seriously regarding our independence. So they needed a way to get into the country to be and work as police officers. And they needed the Icelandic police to help them out in their investigation of Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. Mm-hmm. So they made up this story to the Icelandic prosecution office, to the Ministry of Interior, who is actually the ministry over the police and the whole justice system, and also to the National Icelandic Police, that they made up the story that there was an incoming cyber attack on Iceland, an imminent threat to Iceland and the Icelandic infrastructure. They talk about inside the ministry, because I have actually interviewed with the former Minister of Interior at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And he describes this as like that Iceland is just about to fall regarding infrastructure. They're going to take down the electricity system and much more. So, of course, the Ministry of Interiors, they let them inside the country and say, please help us, because we don't have much experience with fighting cyber crimes. But this was all a lie. And the former Minister of Interior, Mr. Ögmundur Jónasson, he actually found out that this was just bullshit. They were actually investigating Julian Assange WikiLeaks, and he asked them to leave the country. But they did not. They did not until 5 days after they were asked. So we are talking about here an international incident that allies, NATO country allies, that the United States just trampled on our independence with their big FBI and Justice Department.
And that's something that really struck me in the article is what has been the response in Iceland, to the article itself, hearing this news, and then even at the time, if it made a splash at all.
Well, most of the news outlets here in Iceland have covered this,
mm-hmm.
and they're basically this is kind of a slow burner because there's so much information in this. So reaction to it, it's starting to come a little bit, not much, but it's a slow burner. I don't know when the flame is gonna be too large, but it's gonna be, because there's so much in the story that needs to be, I would say, investigated better.
Mm-hmm.
Why this is happening? Why are we allowing the FBI to come here again in 2019? Mm-hmm. After we knew they were basically fucking with us. Sorry about my French. In 2013, mm-hmm. 11. Sorry. Why are we doing this? Why are we cooperating with the American FBI when we are actually trying to get legislation through our parliament to protect whistleblowers?
Mm-hmm.
Why are we then working with the FBI at this case? So it's just a lot of strange things, but hopefully people will wake up here also.
And we talked about this a little bit earlier, but some of the context that was happening when Julian Assange and WikiLeaks came to the country in 2010 and 2011, there was a lot of animosity towards financial institutions, particularly after the 2008 crash.
Yeah.
Do you think in the intervening years there has been a decline and a lot of that hate, and this is reflected in maybe this disinterest about the Julian Assange case, and then in regards to the article specifically, why maybe there hasn't been such English or Western press covering the story? I know that you mentioned earlier that it is a complicated story, and it certainly is, but I don't think any journalist would shy away from something that's complicated or complex.
No, it's also they need to validate everything. And that's basically the most important job of a good investigative journalist, to do that. You can actually see a little bit of a problem we have now after this news broke, that, for example, Russia Today, they picked up the story and they actually got some facts wrong
mm-hmm.
in their news coverage. For example, they said in their news coverage that Siki got actually paid $5,000 to become an informant of the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
This is not true. He got $5,000, but he actually only got it because he was this was for travel expenses.
Okay.
So it had nothing to do with the Julian Assange case that he was basically paid some $5,000 to become an informant. So the facts matter here, and also a good media coverage of this case is really important.
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe my colleagues in the United States and the UK, I know that the Guardian and many other, for example, the London Times, are working on this story. Mm-hmm. and making sure and verifying everything it says. So I don't know if it's happening in the United States, but if I would have this story and I would be working at a media company in the United States, I would have to verify everything.
Absolutely. Bjartmar, just a few more questions for you here. I know Iceland is a very small country. I don't want to say a very small country, but it is a smaller country. And is there kind of any kind of national opinion about Julian Assange, WikiLeaks, or I hate to say the idea of a free press. Everybody says they support a free press, but I don't know. Do you when WikiLeaks came in 2010 and 2011? Do you feel like that craving for a free press is still there, and how they feel about people like Assange?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's always a craving for documents here in Iceland, especially secret ones.
Mm-hmm.
We had the Panama Papers in 2016, which then we had the biggest protest in the history of the country after the 2008 protest. This was even bigger. The Prime Minister had to resign, and the government basically collapsed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's and then again now in 2019. We got the Fishwell files from WikiLeaks,
mm-hmm.
which shows how an Icelandic fishing company was actually bribing Namibian officials to get fishing quotas in Namibia and stealing basically resources and money from the Namibian government through this program, because they would have to pay more if they would not have bribed these ministers and officials. So we love open information. We love leaks. Mm-hmm. The best cases which I have worked on came from leaks here in Iceland. So we have, I would say, a mostly positive attitude towards WikiLeaks and even Julian Assange. I mean, you can criticize the man. Mm-hmm. You can say a lot of things about him, strange, and so on, whatever you want. The thing is, it's much bigger than him. It's more about WikiLeaks. And that's the thing. I would say almost 80-90% of Icelanders support what they do.
Absolutely. And then my final question, and this is something I've been thinking about since that amazing end to the article, is, Bjartmar is basically still, or at the time, he was still committing crimes. He drives away in his Tesla. I think he says he's still doing business as usual. Kind of from what I can tell, under the auspices of an FBI immunity, and correct me if I'm wrong there. What caused him to do this? What caused him to sit down with you and just admit that this was all a lie?
Well, it all started, as I say, with my first investigation, which was about his financial fraud here in Iceland, how he was using basically shell companies and empty companies with no operations to cheat money out of companies. So basically, he put a lot of product into credit of these companies. And of course, there was no credit for it. He never paid these products. And we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars of product he stole. he actually stole 1.5 ton of frozen chicken through this cheat. And sold it somewhere. We haven't found actually where, but we have our suspicion about one restaurant here. So it's these small crimes he did, and he lived on this. And he loved his fancy cars, so he was always cheating the car rentals out of Mercedes, Land Rovers, and these more expensive cars, like for example the white Tesla he drove. I mean, this is a rental car. 90% sure that he just cheated some car rental out of it. And this was the case I started working with on. So when I saw that I could actually speak to him in some kind of manner to push him, that I don't know why I got this feeling, but it was like he wanted to get this out of his chest. He wanted to speak. And I don't know the reason. I'm not a professional psychologist or trained or educated as one. So it's only my guess that he was lonely. That's my personal opinion.
Wow. Well, that was an amazing confession to you from him. Bjartmar, thank you so much for speaking with me. I will obviously send you a link as soon as we post this interview. And just before we go, is there anything else you want us to tell us about the case, the article? Anything in general?
Well, it's so much. No, I recommend people to read the article and go into the details of it. They can also, if they want to read the Icelandic article, which has more information, for example, the chat logs, they are in English, so they can just, scroll over all this crazy Viking language until they hit English. And I can send you the link so you can post it also on.
Yes.
And and basically talk about this. Press if they know any journalists, investigative journalists, or any other journalists, to check this out. That's basically what needs to be done, because in Iceland, the justice system is quite important for us. We believe much in it, and the maybe difference between the Icelandic system and the American one is that we believe that we would rather let a guilty man go than to sentence innocent man. That's basically how we build our justice system up. So when you see that all this evidence which could get Julian Assange into prison, basically this is it. An innocent man is then going into prison. So I think people need to wake up a little bit and think this is not only about Julian Assange. People could love him, people can hate him. He's weird, autistic, whatever your feelings about him, it doesn't matter. This is actually more about press freedom in the West. And if they can do this to an individual like Assange, what can they do next?
That is a strong ending. Bjartmar, thank you so much. We will definitely link to the article, and I will be in touch with you soon.
Okay, thank you so much.
Have a nice one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey everybody, that was a great conversation with Bjartmar from Studin. That is an Icelandic outlet that just broke some huge news about the Julian Assange case. Again, this is Daniel. I am without Ben today, but he will be back for our next interview, and this is Villain for All Seasons. Thank you so much for listening.